we're talking a bit about team connection and that word team. Maybe people looking in are thinking about team development. But I know that you work a lot with individuals, and you spoke about individual conversations. When I used to be working with pro rugby teams full time, I was sick of hearing the term, there's no I in team. Team first, all that nonsense. Team first. There's no I in team. But I used to think that was nonsense. There is an I in team. And when I look at your environment, I see a group of individuals sharing the same common values, same drivers, same goal, but expressing themselves in a very individually unique way, which I love, which is I'm all about. So I just want you to talk to that. There's no I in team,
Yeah, I know what you mean. What I like to think and I hope for our team is if we all understand each other better. If I understand you, Craig, why you want us to win at the weekend, whether it's for money, whether it's for fame, your family back home. You've loved Wigan Rugby League since you was 3 years old. Although my reason might be different, I respect yours, you respect mine, and we're both ripping. And as long as that respect for one another, then that connection and energy, you are putting the team first, but it actually can strengthen the bond of the team to understand the individuality of your teammate. Of course there's unselfish acts, but really the team serves each individual, and the individual serves the team. It's a bit of a cycle.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's start with being pronounced dead on the side of the road. What happened after that?
Well, yeah, it was when the emergency services turned up at the accident. They were asking people in the car, was he speeding, etc. And they said, "Oh no," he says, "It's too late now. He's dead." So I'm not a ghost, so I didn't die. And then I lost, I think 8 pints of blood in your body. I think I lost 6 of them. So I had a blood transfusion on the side of the road there and then. They rushed me to, there's a hospital in Wales called the Royal Gwent, which is in Newport. Obviously, I know you know. So they took me to the Royal Gwent in Newport, and there was nothing they could do for me there. So then I had a police escort down to Morrison Hospital, which is in Swansea, because that's where neurology was and plastic surgery. And while all this was going on, my mother and father were getting the knock on the door from the police to say, your son's been involved in a road traffic accident, you have to come now. And they were in their night, my mother was in a night dress as well, a petticoat. It was in 11:30 at night, I think, something like that. My dad was in his pyjamas, and they said, we'll just get changed. They thought it was a little bump. They said, no, you haven't got time to get changed. It's that critical, you have to come now. So they were put in the back of a police car. They were blue lighted then from Llantrisant, or Talbot Green, Llantrisant, to the Royal Gwent Hospital, where I was. But then as soon as they got to the hospital, I was on the trolley coming back out of the hospital, go back in the ambulance to go down to Morrison Hospital in Swansea. And my family weren't allowed to see me as I'm in such a bad way. They weren't allowed to see, as you can imagine, I sustained significant head injuries. I won't go into detail on camera because people are quite squeamish. And yes, I suffered really bad head injuries. And my dad said, can I go into the back of the ambulance with him to travel? And they said, we're not allowed. They said, A, we can't really don't want to see him, but secondly, there's a doctor in the back, there's a nurse in the back, we got all the machinery keeping him alive. And they said, we doubt he's going to make the trip from Newport down to Swansea, which was 40 minutes. So they didn't think I was going to survive the trip.
Right.
Obviously I did. I was in a coma. They operated on me straight away. I smashed my skull into pieces, I suppose. So they had to remove all the bone from my brain. They actually phoned the doctor that night to come into work because he was in the house. They're operating on me. And that was it. And then I was in a coma for 4 weeks then in intensive care. They were called in on numerous occasions to say we probably wouldn't make it through the night. And then when I did start recovering or getting slightly better, they said be prepared because from the scans on his brain, he's got severe brain damage because there's lots of shadowing. They said if he does wake up, there's a chance he won't wake up. But if he does, he's not going to be able to recognise his family, friends, walk, talk, use arms and legs ever again. So I woke from my coma. I remember who people were, but I didn't know. I remember my mother standing on my bed crying and tears falling on my face. And I didn't know where I was. You'd been involved in a car accident, and I didn't know where I was or anything. And that was that. And then the doctors, remember they saying to me, the surgeon saying, you'll never walk ever again. And I said, I guarantee I'll walk at this hospital. And he said, Andrew, you won't ever walk ever again. And I said, I will walk again, no disrespect. I couldn't go from being 5 to 21, being fit, sporty all my life, to being in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. And I know you'd adapt. And I know people in wheelchairs, one from playing rugby, breaking his neck in a scrum playing rugby, and I know you'd adapt. But at the time, you'd want to hear that at the time. And I'm quite a strong mentally and physically person, and I was determined I'd walk again. So I learned to walk it took me about 2 weeks to learn to walk.
So as a young boy, as a teenager, you know, you mentioned that you were a nice guy. Obviously that behaviour's learnt, and it's what you wanted to show to the world, and there's some shadows behind that, or some repressed parts of your own expression. Any other masks that you believed you needed to wear growing up?
I was bullied quite a bit when I was young, and of course I believe our early experiences, you know, are formative, and they kind of shape how we see the world going forward. So I often say to people that we all mature biologically and get older, but psychologically we sometimes get stuck. And so I think emotionally, the bullied parts of me, I repressed my sadness and my fear and my anger and all these different aspects. And yeah, I became a nice guy. I became a funny guy at times. It was debatable, but some people found me funny. I became an achiever. I became a martial artist. I became lots of different things. And I don't hate any of those parts of me. That's been a big part of the work. And that's something I try to support people with, is a lot of us, when we think about change or transformation, we think it's about getting rid of parts of ourselves.
Yeah.
I want to get rid of the addictive part of myself. If you're trying to get rid of any aspect of who you are or how you are, you're at war with yourself, because one part of you is trying to fight another part. So,
Pat, say that again, because it's really, really important for the audience. Can you say that again, please?
Yeah. So we all learn to become adapted to stay safe in the world. So the parts of you that you hate, that you repress, that you deny, that you want to get rid of, you want to work past, they have all done an incredible job up to a certain point of looking after you. So rather than pushing that away and being at war with yourself, I think the work is to welcome back in those parts. So a simple example would be, I might judge myself for my addictive tendencies, but if I can get a little bit closer to my addictive part and say, well, how has this supported me? It wasn't safe to feel my emotions for years, and the addict helped me to get away from that.
Yeah.
Then I can bless that part of me, accept that part of me, integrate that part of me. And anything you try to push away takes on a life of its own. But if you can move a little closer to it and become intimate with it, I think, you know, then you have some control.
Yeah.
I was 29. I was training I was in the gym, and I had a heart attack. I had a huge heart attack, and that was it.
Yeah.
Career came to a crashing end. That was I believe it was the 26th of January, 2012. And that began a very painful, interesting journey of about 7 years until I managed to shift my perception.
So you're 29.
Yeah.
Was you playing for the Dragons then, or Scarlets?
I was at the Scarlets.
You're at the Scarlets.
Yeah.
You're still in and out of the Welsh setup.
Yeah.
You're still young as a prop. You could have played till you were 36, 37. And you've had this incredible shock, heart attack in the gym.
Yeah.
Wow. What happened then?
Well, I was very lucky to survive, actually, mate. You know, I got rushed to the hospital, and I had a quadruple bypass, and it was bad. I was in this real terrible state of health. My heart, pretty much half of the heart died during the heart attack. I had a quadruple bypass, and then when I came round, which took about a week, you know, it was a real savage operation. I lost a lot of the organ in the heart attack, and I wasn't actually allowed to sit up post-op for a week. I had to lie on my back just because I had this like balloon inserted next to the heart to take the pressure off. So that was incredibly challenging and disorientating and confusing and scary, you know. And but when I did wake up and kind of come to, and the drugs kind of wore off, I then was just kind of sent home and left to my own devices, and that's when it really hit home. Then, you know, that like I wasn't very well. Yeah, I could hardly walk 5 meters without being completely out of breath. And And I couldn't even get up the staircase to my bedroom. It would take me, I'd have to stop on 3-4 steps, sit down. I was completely out of breath.
Right.
And then, I navigated that physical battle, because at that point it was just a fight for life, right? It was a survival, just getting through every minute.
Yeah.
And then as the days kind of went past, as I kind of found my equilibrium, then it was more about the mental side started to kick in. And the fact that I'd lost my career, the fact that I was just about to move to France on a very large 6-figure contract, a lot of regret, a lot of shame. And that kind of began to shift from that like huge physical battle that I was still in, but it also then started to become a mental battle.
Yeah.
And that's when the challenge really began, mate, to be honest with you.
So one of the big events, of course, in the movie is that you needed to eat and you made a decision to eat the flesh of the dead. Talk to me about the reality that hit you when was it the captain that made that decision?
The captain and the older guys.
Talk to me about that time where you realised you'd run out of provisions, there was no more food, zero food, and the only way of living and giving yourself a chance was to eat the flesh. Talk to me about that decision and what was going on in the minds of you all then.
Well, we had heard at that moment, at the 7th day, that the rescue will not be coming. They were searching for our bodies in December. This was in October. So the rescue was finished.
Wow.
The search was finished. Wow. So that was a big punch that we got.
Sorry to interrupt you. Was that also the time when, I don't know if it was the captain, he made a statement saying, we've got good news. Nobody's coming to rescue us. We have to rescue ourselves. Was that the same time?
Yes, at the same time. Yes,
Okay.
That's right. We heard on the radio that the searching was at finished, and one of the boys entered the plane and say, "I have two news to give you. One good and one bad." Well, what's the bad? The bad is the search had been finished, and what's the good? We are going walking from this place.
Yeah. Okay.
It
So
was absolutely crazy at that moment because it was main winter, snow, 4,000 feet high. It was incredible.
yeah.
At that moment, we had what you could say your small nail of biscuit or perhaps a chocolate that you put it in your mouth and it's melted, and we drink a little lid of
Like a bottle top, was it?
bottle top. Yes,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
A bottle top of Coke, wine,
Yeah.
whiskey, things like that. We were 28 at that moment.
Yeah.
So this was the only thing. And one night they came and said, well, we cannot continue eating these little pieces. We will all be dead. So the idea is to get energy from the flesh of the people who had died. And that was awful to see, to hear it.
Yeah.
Why? Because they were telling you we are going to eat people that were our fellow companions at school for 12 years. The boys who have been training with us last week.
Yeah.
And we were also going over a social taboo, a religious taboo, and it was not so easy. But all the circumstances was like push us to take that decision.
Okay.
And at first we were shocked. Afterwards, we say this is between death and life.
Yeah.
You can choose.
Yeah.
And at 19 years, we choose life.
Okay.
And we make also a deal between the 28 that were there,
Yeah.
that the ones that were alive must remain alive, eating the people that died. So it was a main ordeal, or you could say a main decision
Yes.
with all of us. We were all in it.
Team decision.
Team decision, that's right.
Okay.
Because afterwards, it make it easy also for the fathers, for the boys that didn't came, to understand what happens at that moment.
Okay. It's almost as if you're so fucking high, and you need to have some lows. Tell me about some of the lows in your career. Some of the times where you struggled and you were asking big questions and you were in trouble.
Yeah, there's
What stands out?
What stands out? Injuries.
Yeah.
Injuries, and not kind of. I felt like I was letting the team down. Do you know what I mean?
When you got injured?
When I got injured, yeah. I snapped my cruciate again in 2001. So then come back after that, and 2007 I had a bad season. Just injuries. I felt like I was letting the team down, and not giving them my best. But that's just part of playing rugby and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That kind of resonates with me quite a bit.
When you got injured and when you did your cruciate again, like when you were 18 and you got injured, I'm telling myself that it was fucking hard, and one of your coping mechanisms was to go on the piss, right?
Yeah.
Did you find that happened later in your career as well when you got injured? Did you kind of get into some troubles when you got injured?
Oh yeah, definitely. You kind of mask it a little bit. You mask what you're going through, and there was no kind of reaching out and speaking honestly about, I'm going through a bad time here, mate. I'll level with you. I've got depression. I'm stressed. I've got anxiety of whether I'm going to be playing again and stuff like that.
Well, in your era, you didn't do that, did you?
No.
You just wore a mask, didn't you?
I've just
got to get back.
Kept my mouth shut.
I don't want to be seen to be weak.
Yeah, 100%. So I would never speak out.
Yeah.
I would never ask for help.
Yeah.
It'd be all internally. But I was very fragile as a person.
Yeah.
I'm very fragile, and it was only like, well, I didn't speak about it.
And that must be hard for you because you're quite sensitive, aren't you?
Yeah, like I said.
And for you not to speak up about it, it must be tough. It must have been tough.
It was tough, mate. You go on the piss and you self-medicate, with painkillers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you just go in there like a spiral down.
You're just blocking out your feelings, aren't you?
Yeah, that's why you took the painkillers to block out the feelings of everything.
Yeah.
So you don't feel nothing.
Yeah.
You're numb.
Of course.
But then it's only like later when I had to speak about it. And I only did that afterwards, after I'd finished playing, where once my career was coming towards an end, I was in a world of pain.
Yeah.
Inside.
Right.
World of pain. I was crumbling. But I had to put on a front.
Yeah.
Because I was still coaching a team.
And you're still Sean Long, aren't you?
I was still Sean Long, who everyone you thought was a maverick or whatever. Who, played rugby and he won this and that. Oh, he's a tough cunt.
Yeah.
No, I was crumbling inside.
Book of Gabor Mate, Peter Levine, they say that, the effects of unresolved trauma can be devastating.
Yeah.
Those are his exact words.
Yeah.
And he also says that the impact of trauma may not be fully conscious, but it's certainly fully active. Yeah. What this means is the man who was hit as a child will feel compelled to hit as an adult. And so when you realize what these people have been through, and most of them haven't dealt with it.
Yeah.
It's still in their
Still
unconscious.
repressed.
It's devastating.
Yeah.
If it's just me and my family, it's devastating on that. I get emails every day from wives saying, my husband's a nightmare. He was an ex-boarder. I don't know what to do. But then if you're in a position of power,
Of course.
and as I do the more research, I have a database now with 230 names on it, and these are the most influential and powerful people in the world, have been to boarding school, and many have had horrific times. Rupert Murdoch, he went to boarding school, he was bullied. The head of CNN, head of the FBI, Donald Trump, Boris Johnson.
Yeah.
In the book that called Just Boris, I read this out. It says, In any case, family observers detected a startling change in Boris not long after he had began attending Ashdown House. One noted, "I heard he had hard times at school for his Turkish lineage, coming under fire for being a foreigner and coming over from the Channel, from Brussels. So he created a dishevelled look and persona, this 1930s-style English eccentric who appears to be bumbling but is actually fantastically well read. It was a survival tactic and it worked brilliantly."
I was going through a level of change, late 20s. I was coming out of a 10-year relationship. I was almost done with the tennis as well. I'd been playing since I was 5 years old. I'd been coaching hard for 10 years. I'd been partying hard for 10 years as well. And I was also, you know, being a lad from Liverpool, I was, you know, trying my hand at a few other things that were, you know, just a lad about town, you know what I mean? Anything I could get my hands on, really. So I was burning the candle at quite a number of ends. And I was exhausted as well. And I definitely wanted change. I was ready for change. And I remember sort of giving this meditation a go. And I just sat there, didn't know what I was doing. I just sat there. And instantly, after probably around 10 or 15 minutes, I remember there was like a quietness. There was no thought. There was no thoughts. But there was a sense of awareness. And I was asking, what's that? What's this sense of presence? So I had an experience quite early on. And you know, as I've...
An experience of oneness expansion.
Yeah. It was, there was a sense that there was a presence, but it didn't have no specific location.
Okay, so you disappeared.
Yeah.
As what you thought you were.
Exactly. You know, there was no thought process, so there was nothing to identify with. And what I do know now about the practice, it was an experience of naturalness or oneness or transcendence, you could say. And I remember coming out and I was overwhelmed with emotion. I also, at the time, started to practice some yoga. You know, this was back in 2009, 2010. And I started to experience things in a yoga class that I only really ever was able to experience on the dance floor. This high, this embodiment, you know, this natural ecstasy. So, you know, there was experiences in a yoga class, and then there was some early moments with the meditation, and I couldn't deny the experience. And in 2011, I was like, it was late November, and I was exhausted, and I remember just coaching this guy, and middle of the lesson, and the racket fell out my hand, and I was done. I'd exhausted tennis, and my body was falling apart. But I think I was also ready for the journey.
Shame can kill you, and does kill people. You know, it drives you into parasympathetic collapse. And if you go far enough down, you die. People have died of shame. Anger can kill you, but anger is very important. Anger says that there's a threat. Anger also tells you in a relationship that there's a disconnection. If there's a threat, then we need to manage the threat. If there's a disconnection, we need to create connection.
So Keith, if you're working with me, you and I know the importance of practice.
Yes.
What's my homework?
Well, here we go. This is really good. So, when she criticized you, what happened? What did you feel? And what did you do? What did you do? What did you feel? What did you do?
It's almost as if I go on the attack to block out the feeling, and then I want to check out and not have to face it. It's like a fight or flight.
Fight or flight. So first of all, what that is, what you're describing is a defensive state. And so I want to explain that because it's important to know what it is.
Please.
You get threatened. Your nervous system gets threatened. I call the entire adaptive unconscious shadow. So there's positive and negative. It guides us all the time by generating states of consciousness that change every 3 or 4 seconds, sometimes every 0.3 of a second. Those states of consciousness have an emotion, they have an action tendency, and they have a story. When you feel threatened, there's an amplified or numbed emotion. There's a distorted story towards the negative that's preparing us to fight or flight. There's a destructive impulse to fight or flight, and there's diminished capacities for empathy and self-reflection. Okay, that state is instantiated in 40 milliseconds when you feel threatened.
Yeah.
You don't decide to have this state. You discover yourself in it.
Yes.
Okay. When you get criticized, the immediate response, you enter that state. The destructive impulse is to defend. Let me explain to you why you're wrong. Let me explain what's wrong about you. You know, these are the impulses that
For sure.
are destructive impulses. In a relationship, these are destructive because, one, they're amplifying the conflict, but two, they're continuing the disconnection. Because why are you mad? You know, why did she do the thing that irritated you? There's a disconnection in the relationship. If we're disconnected, it's disturbing. If we're connected, it feels better.
Yeah.
So first of all, get very, very friendly and intimate to that little surge of anger, a little surge of defensiveness, and then believing the thought, surrendering to the impulse.
Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, just get a taste of that. Just I can taste it. When it happens, and you're with someone you care about, like her.
Yeah.
And I'm just talking about your ex-partner or her as the feminine.
Yes.
Rather than go into defense, go into validation. Okay, what's valid about your criticism of me?
That's the desire. That is the desire. The desire is to actually put my hand on my belly in the moment and just be with it and validate it and breathe with it.
Yeah. And then tell her.
Yeah.
So here's what's valid about that criticism. Here's what I'm going to do about it. And then you do it. Now, your masculine heart opens when you catch a flaw, acknowledge it, resolve to fix it, and then follow through. Okay? As you do that, your sense of being the warrior is strengthened. You're centered. And so the homework is first, notice that sudden shift into explain, attack, counterattack, argue. Focus into validation without anything else. This is what's true. This is not what's not true. I'm sure there's a lot of not true things. Here's the true part. This is what I'm going to do about it.
Yes.
And then tell her.
Yeah.
Notice, this is the last part. Notice if you feel more positively connected after you do that.
Yeah.
Notice if she continues to attack.
Yeah.
Now, if she does, she has a problem, which is fine. You need to help her with it if she's your partner.
Of course.
But usually when one person is validating, the other person has a lot of trouble continuing an attack. Okay? So that's your
So
assignment.
much time and effort into your role within the Irish Rugby Football Union. I know how hard you work. I know how committed you are and the attitude that you've got towards building something. And then around about 2009, you were diagnosed with cancer, right? And then 18 months later, you were forced to leave the IRFU to go undergo treatment. And from speaking to you a few years ago, I'm aware that that's been a roller coaster over the years. I'm interested to know how that journey's been and what you've learned about yourself during those times, and if your outlook on the world has changed, if your attitude towards yourself has changed, what's changed, if anything, over those years of in and out of treatment?
Yeah, Craig, I think 2009, and I hung in there, and treatment for cancer back then was a little more primitive than it is now. But thankfully, I had very good oncologists, but I knew that I couldn't keep going because it's a daily routine where we were in the RFU. It wasn't 9 to 5, and a lot of travel and that, and the energy. I was on hormonal therapy as well. of prostate cancer. And they were monthly injections. I'm not being light minded or hearted about it, but I empathise with women who go through the menopause, because part of the side effects of the hormone therapy is the whole cascade of symptoms that are similar to the menopause.
Right.
But going through that, there was one small little thing that kept I suppose, coming to mind. As you will have known, we'd have been monitoring players in every way possible, and we used to monitor heart rate variability. We used to monitor various markers for stress. And I was still using the first beat, which is a monitor of your HRV. And my results from after being diagnosed with cancer, because I had a very high PSA level of 39, and I was inoperable for that. So I just had to get on the radiation therapy quickly. I had to get on the hormone therapy. But my HRV figures were just going in the wrong direction. So I said, okay, this is the vagal nerve. So I studied this, and I wanted to know what's happening. Am I being stressed by the disease, or am I stressing myself to complement the disease, so to speak?
Yeah.
So it struck me back then that the only way I could go was go with the flow, go with the therapy, go with what was required for the management of the cancer. And that's partly why I remember sitting with Eddie Wigglesworth and said, Eddie, no, look, I've just decided to go with the flow, because I'll be at a meeting and I'll just lose all interest. I'll just have this hot flush, or I'll just get weak, or I'll get tired. And the effect of the therapy as well, it makes you slight brain and the fog that goes with it. And I wouldn't have been as sharp. And so I wasn't going to be of use to myself, not to mind my role in rugby. So thankfully, Eddie was very good, and Eddie Wigglesworth, he was my direct line manager. And that's it. I laid low. And I went with the flow, Craig. And I think I've had lots of discussions, again, with an old pal, the great AK, who's had his journey with cancer. And AK would say to me, he'd say, yeah, Hennessy, you're a fighter, you're an athlete. You're a good fighter. I said, no, AK, I'm not fighting anymore, because fighting equals stress. I'm just going with the flow.
Interesting, because you were like that though, weren't you?
I was, yeah.
Okay,
I was.
okay.
I had to just change completely.
As I say, like that 18-year-old me went through this meteoric rise like straight away. So I played at Wembley. We lost that game, but then we played at Old Trafford a few months later for the grand final, and I won a grand final at 18. This thing that I'd always wanted to do, which it was funny, because I was like, oh, I'm gonna have this glow about me forever now. Do you know what I mean? Just expect this glow to last with you. And I remember at the end of that game, mate, I'd injured my shoulder, and I was getting operated on for my other shoulder, my left shoulder, because there was a slap tear in there, and I had a lot of pain, a lot of my career with shoulders.
Just constant pain. Constant pain,
yeah. From gym, from a lot of stuff. Which is hard, it's hard, because it's this buffer in between what you're natural at, and so that was a high and a tiny low that was sort of taken, swept up in the mass of what was adulation really for that year. And then the next year was played in World Cup Challenge, and I remember going through the line against Melbourne Storm twice and sort of ripping it up that game, getting man at match. World Cup Challenge, 19 years old at Edinley, and I guess that high and that trajectory was stopped a few weeks after that when I dislocated my shoulder against Hull KR away. And
how old were you?
19.
19,
And it was
just
a
to get
big-
your shoulder, okay.
Yeah, it was a big one, and I had to have a lattier where they, 9 months out, they take a bit of bone from the center of your chest and put it to the left of your shoulder to block it up. And well, yeah, I mean, I just felt. I guess I felt vacant a little bit. I felt like the air had been taken out of me, and I felt like all of a sudden there was this fight that I had to feel any sense of joy, really, at that age. Especially when I came back and I couldn't put the size on and I couldn't be the player that I was, and I was in and out of the team.
And you couldn't train the way you wanted to train.
Exactly, yeah. It was like this thing that was stopping me just being that everything,
Yeah.
It was painful, really painful. And it wasn't just for me, it was for everyone else. I felt like I'm not being what I'm meant to be for.
So you're living in a world of shoulds.
Yeah.
I should do this and I should do that and I should be that.
Yeah. And even when my shoulders are killing me, I'm like, this fella's fine. That fella's fine. Why is it hurting me? Why am I being affected? And yeah, there was injuries and these highs, which, I'd allowed myself to reach and got there, but it felt like there was I couldn't quite achieve everything I wanted, you know. Which,
so were you moving into an era where there were more lows than highs as a player?
I think possibly, yeah. Yeah. I think 2021 we won the treble, and that was after that period where 2014 I was in and out of the team. 2015 I was probably one of the first names on team sheet. I put size back on. I started wrestling again and challenging and competing.
Yeah.
And I like double the size. And I'm like, all right, I'm here now. I'm at the party.
Yeah.
People when injured, when you're injured and people say, oh, you're getting there, aren't you?
Yeah. I
felt like I was there.
Yeah.
And the end of that year, I'd done my ACL. Which
another big injury.
Is massive, absolutely massive. And what that was a period of 12 months where I was on crutches for 3 periods of that, 3 6-week periods.
Yeah.
I'd had 3 operations on my right knee, 1 on my right shoulder just for good luck. And I was like...
At the age of?
21 going on 22.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was a dark time, that, actually. 2016 was a dark time. And I remember seeing some of your stuff in your story and identifying with what you'd said you'd felt. And ultimately, I feel like it was a big stripping away of a lot of my ego.
Didn't feel like that at the time, though, right?
No, it felt like I was dying a little bit.
Yeah.
Felt like I'd lost meaning.
Yeah.
Felt like there was something deeply wrong with me.
What do you see as the greatest challenges for men right now? What
unacknowledged shame. Shame that's not seen as shame, because many of us men, women too, but men more, when we feel shame, it's such an uncomfortable emotion, we almost instantaneously let it morph into rage, aggression, or withdrawal, emotional numbness.
Yeah.
In either case, it looks like we're not feeling shame, we're just withdrawn, or we're really angry.
Yeah, that's definitely happened to me in relationship.
And then if you we're going reverse a little bit, you go, it began with shame.
Yeah.
Something he or she said to me made me feel incompetent, made me feel like I'm a little kid again, reminds me of my father, the bullies I had at school or whatever.
Yeah.
And once a man recognizes his shame and knows it from the inside, there's a huge freedom. Then he can distinguish healthy shame from unhealthy shame. He can understand how much it's driven him. Like a lot of us men feel shame arise whenever we're incompetent in a certain area.
Yeah.
Building something, sex, everything. And And once we see that, it doesn't go away, but our relationship to it changes. That's the whole thing about intimacy. You know, it's not about getting rid of stuff in ourselves that we think shouldn't be there so we can be a more liberated human being. It's more like making connection with everything, especially the stuff you find ugly, unflattering, even disgusting you have inside yourself.
Yeah.
So if I see a guy with a very dark porn habit,
Yeah.
I mean, I know I'm not going to say you shouldn't do that, you're bad. It's more, I'm going to invite you how to outgrow it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And how we do that, we have to go into the wounding that first drove you into it in the first
Yeah,
place.
yeah.
And it has to be tangible, it's heartfelt, it's very emotional.
Yeah.
And men that do that end up outgrowing it, then they can really connect with a partner.
Well, you did that with me, and I outgrew it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, because you were willing.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because it's obviously unspoken. A lot of the men that I've worked with, they have issues with form.
Tell me about your crush when it happened. You know, you were in business, you were relatively successful, and then you were in a relationship. Yeah. What happened, bro?
Oh man, it's like, how do you even begin it? It's like everything that I had never dealt with landed at the same time. So to paint the picture, yes, I lived in this beautiful city called Santa Barbara, California, seaside city, very wealthy city. I had started a business there, a CrossFit gym that we built out into a strength and conditioning facility. I was seeing acupuncture clients. I had this very thriving idea, very community oriented, a lot of public speaking, a lot of community creation. I was married to what I thought was the love of my life.
Yeah.
We had a kid on the way, like your classic, everything's going the way it should be story, with a little bit of an asterisk by it. I'll talk about that in a second. And then in very short time, we lost the pregnancy. She took that as it's a sign from the universe that we shouldn't be together anymore. And I woke up one morning, Craig, and she was just out the door. Like I was married, you know, an hour before, had breakfast, and then poof, gone.
Wow.
And I remember I moved in with my business partner at the time, so I was like, I can't be in my house, right? This is too fast. Everywhere I go, I see, I smell, there's too many memories here. I don't know what to do. He's like, just come crash with me for a couple days. Live down the street. And I was at his house, and the next morning at breakfast, like, well, what are you going to do now that there's been this big opening? I was like, I'm not going to do anything. Like, I'm just going to kind of carry on, and maybe this will pass, and I hope we get back together. And he says,
so he saw it as an opening. You didn't initially.
I didn't initially, no.
How did you deal with that pain initially?
I threw up. Like literally threw up, because I was just like, how can this? It was so. I keep coming back to the speed of change. Yeah. Right. Like the rug got ripped out from under my life, and there's a developmental model that a mentor of mine has created that says, like, is the world okay? Am I okay? What can I do? How well can I do it? And I was up in the what can I do? How well can I do it? It's what I thought stage of life, and then suddenly, boom. Like, I don't want to leave my house. What is happening? I thought we were having a kid. I was going to be a father. Now I'm going to be single? How does this happen in, a week's time or 2 weeks' time?
So certainty to uncertainty.
Just
like that.
Unbelievable. Like just a shift in my world. And to frame it, I have very little training in how to navigate anything like that, if at all. I'd read some Carolyn Mace work, so I had some idea of a bit of a spiritual understanding of life. I'd gone to acupuncture school, so I understood energy, but this was like, welcome to reality.
Okay.
And my business partner at the time, God bless him, said, I think you should use this as an opening because I don't think we should work together anymore either. And so for 6 years, I built this community and this business with him. Suddenly my marriage is over, and now it's pretty clear my business partnership is over.
I was at Wasps for 3 years. We won everything. We were the most successful period of the club. I went to Leicester Tigers. We almost won every single trophy. Worked for Wales, British Lions. So yeah, I had a lot of success, and I was known as this S&C coach that mentored a lot of young interns coming through, and a lot of them have gone on to be successful in their own right. So I had this capacity to mentor as well. And I know I've painted a bad picture about aggression and anger and stuff like that, but I also had a capacity to, I sent a message the other day to a former mentee of mine who's now the conditioning coach for Wigan. Wigan won the Challenge Cup at Wembley. And I said, well done, mate. And his words to me were, I said, well done, mate. You've had a big impact at the club since you've been there. He said, well, I was taught from the best. You taught me it's about the people, not about the process. So I didn't realise at the time, but, you know, I probably put people first. No, I did lead with strategy. I am a strategist, as you know.
Yeah.
But I think what I brought to rugby at that time is focus on the people. And when I was working for Wasps, every other team had one conditioning coach. And because I had a focus on the people and I wanted the players to feel like we cared about them.
Yeah.
And to kick them up the fucking arse so they couldn't fall through the net.
Yeah.
You know, the two sides of love.
Of course.
Support and challenge.
Yeah.
So I went into the coach war in Gatland and said, mate, I need 3 more S&C coaches. I said, you've got to find the money. So overnight, we had 4 S&C coaches, and then I got in touch with Bath Unit, and we were the first club to have interns. So instead of just having me in the gym, we had 7 of us in the gym.
Wow.
All the other teams had 1. So we created a culture where nobody could fall through the net. Players loved it. They felt like they were seen.
Safe.
They felt safe. They felt not non-judged.
Yeah.
They were always
Supported.
supervised and supported in every single area, and we used to delegate different play groups to different coaches, and everybody does that now, but nobody was doing that at the time. So I guess, in fact, it's nice having this conversation because I see the link now between then and now, because now my work with men in leadership is very, very much centered around. So if you came to me as a client, my job with you is to help you to reveal your uniqueness as a leader.
Yeah.
It's all about you. So all my processes that I do with my clients, it's not methodologies and systems. You need to learn that.